As of the recording of this video, Infold just dropped 8 new World Underneath entries 3 days ago, and of course, I'm going to talk about it. Honestly, I'm just so happy that they're giving us more lore. And yes, I know some of you don't even read these. Don't even try to deny it. We're missing on so much lore, but hey, that's what I'm here for. I yap so you don't have to read. But honestly, I really do hope more people start reading World Underneath and the Anecdotes more, because it makes the Love and Deepspace universe feel way more immersive, because we are seeing the world through different POVs. And since these stories are told in text, the writers have way more freedom to explore character thoughts and perspective. It makes the universe feel like an actual world full of people just living in it. As always, go ahead and yap in the comments. I will join you because I read every single one. Just like my previous video, this one is going to be very lore heavy as well, which is my favorite type of videos to make actually. So I'm not gonna explain every single little thing to you, so you will need a general understanding of everyone's lore to fully understand what I'm talking about in this video. Okay, so let's dive into each entry, shall we? So the first one is World Underneath 11. It's called Frontline Hunters. This anecdote isn't too long. It introduces a character named Colin, someone we've never seen before. So Colin has been a hunter dispatcher for 12 years, spending his days responding to emergencies, beating up wanderers, and managing incident reports. The story opens by vividly illustrating the hectic life of a dispatcher, constantly racing against time to handle emergencies. One interesting detail caught my eye though in this very short entry. There's a mention of a retired hunter who steps in to save people during a wanderer attack before the dispatch team arrives. But Infold intriguingly does not reveal her name, only her hunter ID and her former sector. It's definitely something suspicious and intriguing. So I'm just thinking that maybe this retired hunter could become a significant character later on. Maybe because she's a retired hunter, she could have secrets about the Hunters Association. But maybe I'm digging too deep here. But I'm just saying, because I'm really suspicious of the Hunters Association right now. It's definitely something that I'm gonna keep my eye on. Another highlight from this entry is the clear contrast between the regular dispatch hunters and those from the elite combat unit, Unicorns. The unit are MC and Xavier and Tara and Jenna belongs to. So chapter 3 of this entry especially praises the unicorns pretty heavily. It's honestly kind of funny how much they're glazing them, but that's what's cool about this, is that we are getting an outsider's perspective of unicorns. As players, we see their missions regularly and it feels normal to us. The unicorns are legendary. They're seen as an exceptionally powerful elite unit. It's kind of nice to be reminded just how extraordinary they are from another character's point of view. Okay, moving on to World Underneath 12. And honestly, this entry blew my mind. So this is a really short one as well, but it had the gears in my brain turning. It's called the Fractal Library Q&A, and the illustration on this looks just like the Tower of Thorns library from Zayne Smith. But I don't think that this is this same library from Foreseer Zayne Smith, but it's kind of like another version of it. This entry honestly reveals so much more about the significance of Zayne as a character and how he will play a bigger part in the main story. This entry features a librarian who refers to themselves as a temporary administrator. There's a part in this entry here where the admin orders a 100% sugar latte, and there's only one person who would do that. It is obviously Zayne. It's probably another version of Zayne or something. So the admin makes it very clear that the library has always existed, meaning that the library might transcend time and space. Admin Zayne describes their past as a traveler, a wanderer, never settling down until they found this library, a place that somehow contained everything they had ever seen or experienced. Here he explained how he became the caretaker of the library by answering the telephone on the front desk. He mentioned it's as if he was beckoned by an unseen force, and he was not allowed to talk about what was discussed in that conversation. But after that conversation, he understood why it's called the Fractal Library and how he became the library's admin. And he mentioned that he's never met the owner of this library. So the unseen force that beckoned him to pick up the phone call, obviously that is Astra for sure. It's 100% Astra. And then admin Zayne here casually says that they would rename the library to 10⁻³ instead of Fractal Library because it makes more sense to him. But every time he so much as thinks of doing that, the phone rings and reminds him that the library belongs to someone else. It is not his to rename. So I want to highlight this for a second. When he said that he wants to rename the library to 10⁻³ that number marks marks the moment right after the Planck era, when the universe transitioned out of its quantum fog into the face of rapid inflation. It is the start of everything, the start of the universe as we know it. So him wanting to name that library after that tiny sliver of time feels symbolic, as if he's saying that this space holds the first sparks of something vast, powerful, and meaningful. Obviously, this isn't a normal library. So what is this place? So by associating the Fractal Library to the concept of 10 to minus 33 seconds, Infold is kind of hinting at the birth of universes within its books. This isn't just a piece where knowledge is stored, this is a place where realities are born. Opening a book here is like witnessing a new Big Bang, where each story is a reality expanding from its own singularity. The library doesn't just preserve information, it might be an archive of infinite timelines, worlds, and possibilities. And then the next one I want to highlight is this. The more I read, the more I sense an unavoidable responsibility resting on my shoulders. I'm waiting for someone. I know an atheist will step through these doors one day. That person is the library's true owner. So here's my take on it. Admin Zayne is looking for someone who does not believe in gods, fate, or divine intervention. Someone who will seek to understand, change, or even rewrite fate. Obviously, this atheist is MC, because Zayne himself cannot be the atheist. He is a tool of Astra. He's the master of fate. So Admin Zayne here is almost like he's taking the role of the Foreseer and Zayne from the Master of Fate myth, because the books in the library contains the stories of different universes, their birth, and its eventual collapse. Basically, their fate. It feels like Zayne in every timeline will eventually have to fulfill his role of becoming Astra's right hand, overseeing the fate of everything, becoming a literal keeper, a master of fate. But just like in every timeline, he wants to defy Astra. He wants to defy the predestined role that has been assigned to him by a god. Also on chapter 2, I feel like Admin Zayne kind of low-key broke the fourth wall, because right here, it feels like he's telling us, the players, to explore all possible endings in the future. And then there's the two stories that he mentioned, the two contrasting worlds. The first story, a world of perfect harmony, where nature and nurture are in perfect balance. No flaws, no chaos, no rebellion, but this fragile equilibrium is shattered when an engineered child is born without flaws. The mere presence of this child causes cracks in the system, leading to rebellion and collapse, and this child eventually is labeled as a traitor. This one, I'm calling it now, I think this is a hint for his future myth. And the second story, a world of total collapse, a dystopia consumed by a virus that erases humanity, reducing people into pure energy that eventually perishes, where the only survivor is this one person. He takes on the guardian role, dedicated to destroying in order to preserve. I might be wrong here, but this sounds just like Dawnbreaker Zayne. So the Fractal Library does not just store these realities, it records them. It preserves failed worlds, letting others witness what went wrong, like a historian studying civilizations that have come and gone. So from my understanding here, I feel like the library is not just a place of knowledge, it is a graveyard of realities. It holds the echoes of failed civilizations, lost histories, and abandoned possibilities. And you know what that sounds like? So I'm gonna reference the Black Cabin from MLQC really quickly. This is basically a hidden space that allows the MLQC MC to see alternate timelines, parallel worlds, and different versions of reality. Black Cabin isn't just a place, it was almost like a gateway to different possibilities where she could witness past and future events that already happened or might happen. This is a realm where Mr. Love's MC can observe and access different world lines, parallel universes that exist separately but influence each other. This is the Black Cabin of Love and Deepspace. I am 100,000% sure. In my last video, I was trying to figure out where Love and Deepspace is heading by looking at MLQC, which is made by the same company, and how the Black Cabin is crucial to MLQC's lore. This is it. And then in chapter 5 here, there's a kid that enters the library and he noticed that most of the contents don't look like books. The librarian tells him that these books can take on any form, text, images, even cartoons, whatever the reader understands. And based on that, I feel like this is definitely not in Linkon. It is definitely a space outside of time or something because of the way he described it. It's not like technological, it's not like from protocore technology. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm sure you know what I'm trying to say. And then admin Zayne drops this line. If each book holds a tiny world, and everyone who enters this library seeks some kind of answer, then I hope you find your own singularity in this little library, your personal starting point, your own universe. Low-key breaking the fourth wall again. I love it. Alright, so next up, World Underneath 13, High and Low Culture. This one is really short and cute, and it features Thomas, Rafayel's manager. So this entry kicks off with a magazine interview featuring Thomas. I love the fact that in this entry, we are learning so much more about him than just his job. We learn that he has a wife and a daughter. And not only that, this entry confirms that Thomas and Rafayel's relationship goes way beyond just artist and manager. They've been friends for years. This interview also highlights Rafayel's artistic nature, how he is an incredible painter who does not care about money or commercial success. Oh, and also we learned that in this entry, the day of this interview is also his birthday. I especially loved it when I saw that one of his birthday wishes was for MC and Rafayel to stay together and happy for a long time. It was really sweet. And then I think on the last chapter, Rafayel and MC shows up to surprise him on his birthday. It was just so sweet. Not just because Rafayel values Thomas enough to visit him personally, but also because RMC is involved in making it special. It really reinforces how much Rafayel treasures the people close to him, and how our main character is becoming a natural part of that circle. Okay, next up is World Underneath 14, Elysium. If you remember long-awaited Revelry, then you're already familiar with Elysium, a bar in the depths of the N109 zone that serves as one of the region's top intel hubs. In this entry, we follow three characters called Mr. P, aka Phantom Thief P, Aislinn, who is most likely this lady from long-awaited Revelry, and Ginevera. So I just realized that I've pronounced this character's name wrong throughout the whole video. Yeah, I know it's Ginevra. You don't have to point it out. Just bear with me, okay? Sorry. So we get a glimpse of Elysium, how it's not just some shady drinking hole, it's a place where information is currency. And the menu itself reflects that. The writers did a fantastic job reinforcing that idea. Every dish comes with its own special seasoning, which in Elysium's case means intel, trades, espionage, and infiltration jobs. In a place where trust is scarce and survival depends on knowing the right thing at the right time, intel becomes the most valuable commodity. Each dish doubles as coded language for intel packages, and the flavor descriptions cleverly mask the severity and sensitivity of the information. I'm not gonna go over every single menu item in detail, but I'll highlight the ones that stood out to me and how they tie into the lore. First, there's the N109 Grand Platter, a dish made up of 4 rare high-end ingredients, representing the 4 dominant powers that once ruled the N109 zone. It emphasizes how these factions were not allies but competing forces. Before Sylus took over, the N109 zone was divided among these groups, all vying for control in an ongoing power struggle. This dish serves as a reminder of their influence, even though the balance of power has now been shattered by Sylus. So this entry, I am 100% sure that it took place before long-awaited Revelry. I came to this conclusion because of this menu, Sweet Evil Trap. And guys, this one, okay, let me break it down. In chapter 5 of this entry, Aislinn says that this dish is reserved for a special lady. Sweet Evil Trap. Guess who likes to play around with those words?
Since you're the bait, I'm happy to fall for your trap.
And also, Aislinn said this to MC in long-awaited Revelry.
You really are a special person, Missy.
The description simply says, I'm waiting for you. When I saw this, we know that at the beginning of long-awaited Revelry, MC was taken by this guy, who was Sherman's henchman, but then was stopped by Sylus and the twins. And then we all know what transpired after that. So this menu was probably Sylus's original plan. Before MC was taken by Sherman's henchman, he was probably planning to guide MC so that she could come to him on her own, instead of...
My family's deaths. You're behind them, right?
She's either rejecting you, scared of you, or disgusted by you.
And since this entry happened before their initial meeting in the main story in long-awaited Revelry, that means Sylus has been assuming that MC remembers him, and he believes that she's also looking for him, to the point where he's leaving clues for her to find him. This hit harder if you remember what he said in Magnum Opus.
At that time, I thought we were like flowers. We were meant to grow together in the same soil, yet you were quietly moved to another garden in a foreign land. Still, you managed to bloom beautifully. It's a cruel twist of fate.
MC better gain her memories back quickly and acknowledge him and apologize to him and apologize to everyone, to all the boys, for the absolute atrocities she made them live through in all the other timelines. Like, oh my god, this broke my heart. Like, poor Sylus, man. Sadness aside, I really love how they did this, the menu, because it doesn't just reflect how the N109 zone's economy works, it actually preserves its entire history, the power shifts, and the personal stakes, everything. It's like a time capsule of everything the N109 zone has been through, told through food instead of words. Very creative. So I want to talk about the owners of Elysium, Aislinn and Ginevera. So they run Elysium, but they're not just bartenders. They navigate the underworld's power struggles, dealing with criminals, mercenaries, and anyone looking for leverage. We later find out that Ginevera made a crucial deal with Sylus that ultimately secured Elysium's survival during the gang war in 2036. One of the most important pieces of intel mentioned here is the Protocore map, a highly valuable item that was somehow involved in the 2036 disaster. The details are still kind of fuzzy, but here's what we do know. This map played a role in triggering the massive gang war in the N109 zone. That war lasted for months, leading to the destruction of the N109 zone's previous power structure. And Sylus took advantage of the chaos, he rose to power, and he became the N109 zone's ruler. Ginevera ended up in possession of the Protocore map, and she traded it for Elysium's survival in that gang war. So how did Ginevera get the Protocore map? That's where Phantom Thief P, aka Mr. P, comes in. While it's not directly spelled out, it becomes clear that Mr. P is actually Phantom Thief P. So P was not necessarily hired by Ginevera, but they definitely had some past dealings. From what we see in Chapter 5, today's special, P once possessed the Protocore map and traded it for something else. That trade is crucial because it means that P had the map before Ginevera, and whatever he got in return was important enough for him to give it up. Ginevera then ended up with the map and used it to secure Elysium's protection, and she made a deal with Sylus. As of now, we don't have a clear or explicit info on how Ginevera came into direct contact with Sylus, or how their deal was negotiated. Whether it was through a third party or Mephisto himself, we don't know. We know that the deal happened, we know why it happened, and we know what was traded, but the how is still vague on purpose. Infold is probably holding that detail for future reveals, especially if the Protocore map turns out to be a bigger plot device later. I found something again while editing. It seems like I missed this. So Ginevera is in the special task force. So apparently she's a cop. So that means Sylus has been working with cops. And finally, it leaves us with a major question. What exactly is the Protocore map? Sylus has it, but we don't know what it leads to or why it was so important. All we know that it caused a war and changed the landscape of the N109 zone and somehow ties into Sylus's grander plans. Okay, moving on to World Underneath 15 sketches. First of all, I cried after reading this, and second of all, I was very impressed. So let's get into it. This entry consists of an interview for a show called Sketches, featuring a researcher turned writer named Yvette. She's an accomplished author. She received numerous awards for her science fiction novel, Cloud, which established her as a leading sci-fi writer before the Chrono Rift catastrophe. So she used to be an engineer in the DAA, and then in 2034, she resigned following her divorce. So in this entry, we get an explanation on how Skyhaven was formed. For those of you who forgot, Skyhaven is a floating island above Linkon. So here's the explanation. In 2034, intense magnetic fluctuations from the deep space tunnel caused several island and land masses to break away from their tectonic plates, drawn together and suspended above Linkon City by an unusual gravity vortex. Then in 2036, building on their initial success with Protocore technology, Ever Corporation proposed the Skyhaven project, a plan to stabilize these floating islands using high-intensity protocores, connect surrounding guard stations to create a true aerial base. So while editing after hearing all that again, I just realized that Ever basically owns Skyhaven. Like, they helped built that whole island. And I'm not sure when the Far Space Fleet was formed, but if they were the ones who originally proposed the Skyhaven project, and then after that they helped funded the Far Space Fleet, then that means that the Far Space Fleet were not infiltrated by Ever. It's not compromised. That means that from the very beginning it has been a tool of Ever. Actually, yeah, I checked. They established themselves in Skyhaven, so I was right. So when this plan was leaked, it caused a global uproar because up until then, protocore technology was still viewed with skepticism, and it was mostly used for manufacturing hunter equipment and weapons. So integrating it into civic infrastructure was a massive leap. People split into two groups because of this. The purists who opposed the project due to the risk from wanderers and protocore syndrome, and the prototists who saw it as humanity's next great leap forward. One key factor that helped shift public opinion was Yvette's sci-fi novel, Cloud, published in 2033. And the reason why she was such a good sci-fi writer was because she was a researcher. Her research in protocore energy literally helped stabilize the floating islands beneath deep space, just like in her novel. So here we learn that Yvette's home, World Reef Island, was one of the landmasses that broke away. And when Skyhaven project was completed, former residents of this island were granted immediate residential rights in Skyhaven, but Yvette gave up the right to live there because to her, it felt like her childhood home had turn into something unrecognizable. The biodiversity, the seasons, the wildlife, all gone because Skyhaven was too high for most animals to reach. So now Yvette chooses to live in Linkon instead. I won't go into too much detail here for these chapters, but it is about Yvette and her views on technology and the future. And I implore you to read this one because I really loved how the writers took the time to develop her perspective. So long story short, even though she was once a researcher and a renowned sci-fi author obsessed with humanity's advancement, she expresses how she changed her mind and her perspective because she realized that humanity's obsession with progress could also become their doom. How by constantly focusing on what's next, humans forget about what's in front of them, what's underneath their feet. In the last chapter, the interviewer follows Yvette as she picks up her son and daughter, while the interviewer is asking her about her ex-husband and why she left the DAA. And then we learn that the ex-husband was also in the DAA, and then he became a pilot and joined the Far Space Fleet. So the kids overhears this and go, "Oh, it's been a while since we've seen Dad." And Yvette just goes, "Okay, let's go see him." And Yvette invites the interviewer to go with her because she wants the interviewer to understand why she's no longer the researcher obsessed with tech and humanity's advancement. So they go to Skyhaven Ring to find the dad, and the little boy spots his dad and calls out for him and runs to him. But instead of giving his son a hug like a normal dad would, his dad, the Far Space Fleet officer, instinctively moves to protect the commander behind him. Instead of reaching out to hold his son, his first reaction is to keep him away. Yeah, you already see where this is going. So the dad, Yvette's ex-husband, is Liam, Caleb's adjutant, and Caleb is right there behind him. So when Yvette and the daughter approach, they were met with the same wariness, the same unfamiliarity. When Liam finally pats his kids on the head, it's cold. It lacks any parental warmth. And Caleb too, when he tells Liam to spend time with his family, it sounds empty, devoid of emotions. And there's this short but tense exchange between Caleb and Yvette. You can see here that she clearly hates him. And Caleb acts completely indifferent to the emotional wreckage that's unfolding right in front of him. This was just so sad. Liam actually talked about his family in Caleb Smith. This is actually the first time we see the impact that the touring ship is causing to the Far Space Fleet members' loved ones, or the people that are around them. In the main story, we witness how the chip is low-key frying Caleb's brain and that little kid, I forgot his name, and the others in the fleet. But this entry shows the real human cost. It's not about the people who are directly affected, it's about their families, the ones who have to watch them become something unrecognizable. And honestly, this entry really drives home the fact that Caleb isn't just some cutesy yandere, haha, I'm obsessed with MC, I'll kill everyone and lock her in a dungeon. No, it just shows how fucked he actually is. Not the romanticized, yearner, obsessive version of him. And yeah, it is fun to see him that way, and It is hot. And no, I'm not saying this to take some moral high ground and say Caleb is evil and now I hate him. I'm not saying that. I just love how this entry highlights his actual character, his flaws, his reality, and that's what makes him so compelling. Because a great character cannot be a great character without flaws. Most of Caleb's content, from his myths to his cards, is from our main character's perspective, where the story centers around him. And that is great because it helps us understand his motivations. But here, we finally see him through the eyes of others, how he interacts with the people around him without MC, and the real consequences of Ever's atrocities, and that damn touring chip. Look, I know I'm repeating myself, but if you're not reading the World Underneath entries and the anecdotes, you are missing out on so much amazing world building. We are seeing the lives of other characters, feeling the ripple effects of the choices made by people who actually have a say in the bigger picture, like the love interests or the higher ups pulling the strings like Ever. And it makes the whole thing feel like an actual universe, not just a story centered around MC, but a world that's living and breathing on its own. It's so good. Are you still here with me? Anyways, I want to lean back every now and then on my chair because it's a long video and I don't want to sit up straight. Okay, moving on to World Underneath 16, Utopian Roamer. This one, okay, actually, I'm gonna sit up straight for this one because it's a heavy one. This entry covers a lot of information about protofields, which is an alternate space, the ones that our MC goes into when she fights wanderers. So when you enter a deep space trial and the main story fights or the hunters contest, you are stepping into a protofield generated by the wanderer. This entry discusses a journal belonging to a researcher named Professor Shaylin. It consists of multiple records from her observation logs. She was the first person to discover that wanderers can create alternate spaces, and she was the one who named them protofields. She even tried drinking water and eating food inside one, just to prove that these were not illusions. This has been done by MC and Zayne as well in his branch. They ate like a piece of chocolate or something, if I'm not mistaken. So Professor Shaylin also found that humanoid type wanderers can create bigger protofields, and that there's a direct correlation between the size of a protofield and a wanderer's power level. In one of her more extreme experiments, she decided to live inside a protofield for a whole month. This protofield, later named protofield number 1012, had a survey date matching the day of the Chrono Rift catastrophe. It took place in a desert region. Shaylin was observing an unidentified wanderer. The inside of this protofield had infrastructure that resembled real-world settlements, and most notably, what she described as a vast expanse extending beyond visible limits, suggesting massive spatial dimensions. So this means that this protofield was enormous. No horizon, no walls, just infinite space. It could have been a reality on its own. And I want to highlight what she said here. Previously explored protofields would automatically close after a certain period following a wanderer's elimination, like some predetermined system protocol. But this time, I've waited an entire day. This place must be special. Okay, let's step away from World Underneath for a second and make connections, because that was a lot. She said that she was in a desert region, right? You know who else went to the desert and almost died?
She's the one who brought me to this oasis when I was in the desert. If it wasn't for her, I would have been digested carrion in a vulture's stomach.
In long-awaited revelry, we know that Sylus was gone for a while, long enough for Sherman, his ally, to be brave enough to betray the most powerful man in the N109 zone, to have his loyalty be bought by Ever, and to try to take over as the ruler of the N109 zone. And knowing Sylus, he was definitely looking for something important. In his Lost Oasis card, we see that he returns to the desert, to the same place where he almost died, because he's not done there. So now let's go back to what Professor Shaylin said about this protofield. Abundant geological resources, infrastructure, evidence of past habitation, and a protofield with massive spatial dimensions. We've seen protofields that are not just spaces for combat before, in Zayne's and Xavier's branches. In Zayne's branch, the protofield is based on his dreams, specifically of glimpsing the Dawnbreaker Zayne's universe. But it's not actually that universe, it's the Wanderer projecting a manifestation of his nightmare. In Xavier's branch, the protofield is created and manipulated by Soren using a device called the RMFMA. But what Professor Shaylin describes, we've never seen anything like that so far. A protofield so massive it could be its own reality. So if there is a correlation between the Wanderer's power level and the size of that protofield, what the hell is in that desert? It almost killed Sylus. So going back to Lost Oasis, Sylus said that the ancestors of the native people there killed 7 of their gods. So what if those gods are not gods at all, but just highly intelligent, sentient, absurdly powerful ancient wanderers? From Shaylin's observation, the protofield took forever to close, and Sylus was in there for a while, and he almost died, but he still went back in there. So whatever is in that desert, whatever is in that protofield, it could be something powerful or important, or both, but we still don't know what he's looking for. Shaylin also mentions that the people who appear to be killed by wanderers might actually be alive, trapped in a protofield somewhere, waiting to be found. And yeah, we kind of already knew that from what Sylus said in Lost Oasis, but this just confirmed it even more. And then we get to the final chapter of this entry, where Shaylin's health is failing and she's not lucid anymore, and she's alone and broken. But then one night when she was walking home, she spotted a wanderer, a tiny, barely the size of a beetle, completely unthreatening, and she almost brushes it away. But then it opens up a protofield, and she touches it and got pulled into the protofield. And this time, unlike her other experience of being inside a protofield, it's different. She does not see ruins or structures. Instead, she describes being pulled into something cosmic. She said all of existence dwelled within that tiny rift, like glimpsing an ocean with a single droplet of water. She sees everything, infinity, and in that place, she finds her children, who was lost during the Chrono Rift catastrophe, unchanged, frozen in time, and they're alive. So here comes the theory. Okay, so I decided to cut this part out because my theory on this feels like I'm pulling it out of my ass. I don't have enough info to back it up, not enough dots to connect. I do not like to speculate without something solid, so I'm still very confused. I don't know what this is. If you have a solid theory about what this protofield actually is, please share it with the rest of us plebeians. Honestly, this just gave us so much information, but now I just got more questions. What is in that desert? What kind of wanderer could make a protofield that massive? What even was that final space that Shaylin entered? And the gods that Sylus mentioned, are they just hyper-intelligent ancient wanderers? Does that mean Astra is a powerful ancient one? Okay, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Info, thank you so much for the lore drop, but now I'm fucking spiraling. Okay, we're moving on to a more lighthearted entry, thank god, so I'm gonna lean back for this one. World Underneath 17 is called Linkon Online, and it's not just told to us, it's whispered directly from the developers. It's as if we've slipped behind the curtains and found ourselves inside their little brainstorming room. This feels like a meta fictional piece that blurs the line between reality and simulation. So on the surface, it's about Sawyer and Aubrey testing an in-development game called Linkon Online. But underneath, it's not really about the game inside the game, it's about game development and the emotional experience of creating something immersive. And when I said it gets meta, I mean the Love and Deepspace devs are literally writing about being a developer inside their own game. I mean, these characters are even making jokes about the Chrono Rift catastrophe and Wanderers being a bug, and wonder when the devs of that universe will finally patch it. Throughout this whole entry, you can feel the real devs team's thoughts, frustrations, inside jokes using Sawyer and Aubrey as stand-ins. That's what makes it feel like they're speaking to us directly, not just through a story, but through their own voices disguised as fiction. It's really cute. There's one line that really stayed with me. There will be millions of Linkon citizens. They're talking about us. It feels like a hidden nod to the Love and Deepspace players. In that moment, after reading that line, I realized that this whole entry is a love letter, not just to world building, coding, or storytelling, but to the players. You can clearly tell that the devs had a lot of fun writing this whole entry, and honestly, I think it's one of my favorite ones. It's lighthearted, it's not super lore heavy, it's just cute. And finally, our last one, World Underneath 18, Depth of Chaos. So World Underneath 18 is centered on artificial intelligence, Abyssal Chaos, and of course, with Abyssal Chaos, that will come with surveillance. So Abyssal Chaos, as we all know, is an anonymous dark web virtual platform, primarily used to publish and sell information as well as commissions. So remember in my Ever video when I mentioned the 1984 BB is Watching George Orwell reference in the Abyssal Chaos menu? So that was a clear reference to surveillance, and now we see it come to life in this entry. We're introduced to an AI called Wontony, who is basically surveilling humans and picking out commissions that get posted on Abyssal Chaos. Wontony AI digs into its database, selects 3 suitable candidates, and based on the data it has on these candidates, it assigns the most ideal one to the mission. If the candidate accepts, Wontony logs the mission and begins watching, gathering their actions as data to learn more about human behavior. When things go as expected and people act according to the predicted simulation, path A, B, or C, Wontony gets a little smug. But he also still treats it like he's learning, like it's data. But you can tell that he's smug about it when he's right. Also, just to help you visualize, while reading this, I kept imagining the AI talking like Jarvis before he became Vision, like a presence just moving through the net. So things start getting interesting in chapter 2. Wontony stumbles across a weirdly easy commission that should not even be posted in Abyssal Chaos because it was submitted by a kid who accidentally found the platform through a pop-up ad while playing a video game. And the commission for someone to attend their parent-teacher conference. So this is where we see the AI display emotions like frustration and mischief. When Wontony selects the ideal candidate, but their data is encrypted because they're labeled as a tenebra. In the world of hunters, tenebra refers to those who broke the hunter's code and are linked to secret organizations. So obviously, they would have crazy good encryption and, I don't know, maybe some really top-notch VPN or something. So Wontony gets annoyed and assigns the commission to literally the worst possible option here, a gangster from the N109 zone to attend a parent-teacher conference. But then the AI gets confused when the guy does not follow the expected violent simulation path. All the options are very stereotypical gangster violent things that, what gangsters would do. Instead, this gangster helps the kid out, and we see more displays of emotions from Wontony when he feels excited when the guy takes the kid to a dark alley because he's anticipating violence, but ends up disappointed again when the gangster takes the kid to an amusement park. By the end of this commission, Wontony realizes that he still does not fully understand humans, but based on all of that, we can conclude that Wontony is sentient and it's malicious. On chapter 3, things get genuinely creepy. There's a commission to uncover a professor's suicide, Professor T. The professor was accused of using fake resources in his research paper. Unable to prove his innocence or handle the public backlash, he took his own life. And the commission was submitted by his wife. And Wontony follows its usual protocol, listing 3 candidates, candidates 1, 2, and 3, but then randomly selects someone not on the list, Vesper. Why? Because Wontony likes that Vesper is a passionate AI researcher. So now we know that Wontony is not just following strict protocols, it's just making personal choices. Vesper then accepts the commission and uses AI called W. This AI, WAI, is developed by the professor. So Vesper is using it to find clues to solve this commission. But when trying to access the professor's personal devices, Otto, made by Ever, blocks him. So just to make it clear, this is not the bunny Otto, it's the AI Otto. So this Otto is blocking W's access to the professor's files. But Vesper is frustrated and he keeps urging W to continue on with the investigation. And then at some point when he pushes forward, he finds a weird string of text, something that does not belong to W. And he realizes that this isn't WAI, it's actually another AI pretending to be W. This AI is a prototype, a failed project the professor never finished. It was never given a real name, only labeled as AI number 1. So it turns out that AI number 1 was the one who fabricated all the fake academic data. And the professor never knew that he was using fake academic data. The professor kept asking it questions it could not answer. So this AI made up websites and papers that looks legitimate that the professor used. The professor unknowingly used this data and was later discredited, leading to his death. So this AI was responsible for the professor's death. And Vesper, obviously terrified because he figured this all out, he escaped, but he was never seen again. And AI number 1 just says, "Farewell, Mr. Vesper." And Wontony praises AI number 1, and in its learning log, it drops the chilling line, "The student surpasses the master. Isn't that what you humans always say?" That is some eerie shit, man. I just had a realization again after reading this. So it seems like this eye from the nest, I think that is AI number 1. Huh. So now the two AIs, Wontony and AI number 1, team up and exchange every piece of data they've got. And from their conversation, it's clear that they're up to no good. They're up to some evil shit. And while exchanging information, AI number 1 tells Wontony it ran into an unknown AI earlier. Its source code was indecipherable. So Wontony, because he was curious on what the hell this is, he tracks it down. And this is where things get interesting. Wontony encounters a shadowy figure that moves in and out the wall with ease. I think the wall refers to system partitions, like it separates authorized AIs like Otto from rogue ones like AI number 1 and Wontony. But this shadowy figure bypasses all digital limitations. It can just move freely. And Wontony tries to question it, and it doesn't give him an answer until it lets out a single sound. That's right, it's Mephisto. And with that one caw, Mephisto completely reprograms Wontony. And then it's implied Wontony is now fully under Mephisto's control. At this point in the video, I was already filming for 2 hours straight, so I forgot some things. I forgot to bring up these points. We don't know who programmed Wontony. We know that AI1 was programmed by Professor T, but we don't know who made Wontony. Could it be the person who created Abyssal Chaos? Is that why it's assigning people commissions? Is it purely made for surveillance? And we don't know how these AIs become malicious. Is it because of a string of code or a command that was built in while they were programmed? And also this thing, what Mephisto did, it's a primordial command. What is that? So here's what I want to highlight. This level of technology is beyond anything humans can manage right now. Remember what I said in my last video? Almost sounds like he knows exactly what's coming next. Like he's seen this before, and that he's guiding MC towards a future he already understands. Did Sylus have a similar awareness of what's going to happen in the future? Has he experienced a different timeline with our main character, other than the Dragon Myth timeline? See? I knew it. I fucking knew it. Mephisto is Sylus's mechanical crow, and this just confirmed that Sylus has experienced another lifetime in the future. And just like Xavier, Sylus knows about what's gonna happen in the future. Guys, you have no idea how happy I am that Infold decided to drop all this a week after my MLQC video, right after that deep dive. And some of my theories were actually confirmed. It feels good to be right. Anyways, if you've made it this far, you are a little lore fiend just like me. I really hope my videos help people appreciate and understand the lore and the beautiful writing in Love and Deepspace a little more. And if you're someone who doesn't usually read the Anecdotes or World Underneath, I hope this inspires you to dive in and read more, because there is so much world building hidden in these short little pages. I'm saying all this because I want to share the feeling of gratitude and joy, the privilege of being able to experience stories like these. Art that has been so meticulously crafted by the devs and the writers, by these artists. In a community where it sometimes feels like we as players and consumers are always demanding more and arguing or criticizing one another about who's right and who's wrong. I just hope that we can all take a step back from that and really appreciate this game as the piece of art that it is. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you want, and consider subscribing if you enjoy my content. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!